$1 million, they kind of earmarked it, and then they said, for the towns, we're going to give you 5% of the money, which comes to about $2.5 million, and then they would split it amongst the 6 towns based on your tax value.
So what is the actual impact to Matthews? How much more will we be paying in
They're
taxes?
projecting $408,000.
And we would get that back?
Yeah, that would come to us that we could use for greenways, parks, or arts and culture.
However, there's not an agreement in place.
Right.
That says we'll get that back, and that's really the concern. Mr. Query?
Yes, I reckon I'm agreeing with the mayor, and somewhat, because you go back to the hotel motel tax, that was supposed to come back to us after a number of years, and if we hadn't had somebody in the legislature to work for us, we would still be leaving all of it on the table because they kept refinancing stuff. So I don't, till you get the firm language that says we're going to get it without question, I would not be in favor of it. We fought that thing, and we're still only getting, what, 60% now maybe? Is that how much?
75.
How much?
75.
75, and that's, we weren't getting anything before that until we realized they were refinancing everything, and so they were saying the sum never changed, and we were getting nothing.
Yeah, that was originally done for the convention center, and they kept refinancing the convention center. Mr. Melton?
Thank you, Mayor. After this is said and done, I certainly don't want to be the 7 of us sitting out in the rain and the wind with our hand out going, where's our part? I'm not going to, as a member of that, at one time advisory council, now that board of directors, I supported it being on the ballot. But I don't want us to put our time, effort, and energy in supporting something, and then at the end of it, we're sitting here looking like fools for cheerleading for the effort, but we get nothing out of it. And until, one of Commissioner Urban's famous quotes is, "The devil's in the details," and I'm not going to get burned on it before. Hopefully, you ask for this board's support for that. We get full, dead-on, accurate details of what we're being asked to support.
Right. And that's why we wanted to bring it up, and I think that there's a task here, if everybody's in agreement, to begin working with the other towns and trying to get something agreed to before this election, so we're guaranteed we would get the money. Okay, anything else? All right.
So let me make sure, so is the direction to the staff to work with the other managers that the Matthews interest is getting some kind of language or memorandum of understanding or something that would carve out, let's say 5% of that sales tax that would come back to the towns?
Yes, and it would come back to the town for the town to direct the use of that money.
Right, but arts and culture, parks, and greenways isn't acceptable.
Oh, yeah.
Crowd
yeah.
work. We just want the empowered to use it for one of those 3 things.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we just don't want the county coming back to us and saying, okay, you can use it for greenways, but you have to use it on this section of the greenway that we want it used on.
Is 5% what they've already told us they're willing to give? It seems kind of small.
Yeah, that's the way well, you know what, and they've voted to put this on the ballot of that 50 million, or that, 30% would go to parks and greenways at the county's choosing. Some of those could be built in Matthews. 50% is arts and culture, ACE, Arts and Science Council. 16% is the teacher supplement, 16%, and then that's 5% remaining that the towns would go to the 6 towns. Charlotte gets 0, by the way.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? More to come on that as well. Next item is the mayor's report. Got a couple of things. We were able to secure some funding for the downtown multimodal infrastructure study. So we were able to get $32,770 for that. And then the sub-area model, which is part of the planning process, we were able to get $50,000 for that. So this is these are some of the things that are occurring right at the tail end of the process. As Dana said earlier, we'll be asking for submittal of projects, which will, for some municipalities, are going to be multiple millions of projects. But this is the opportunity for each one of the individual members to put something forth. They get ranked and we can get dollars to fund this. So hopefully we will be successful in whatever we decide to ask for on that. The other thing is we've been getting some emails, or got an email from an individual about our efforts with the legislature. The information that the manager has put together is to me very impressive of the work that's been done over the past year and in the long session with the legislature. In that email, there was a comment made that the individual had talked to one of our local legislative officials, and they'd had no idea what Matthews wanted from a legislative agenda. I then picked the phone up and personally called each one of them and verified with them that they absolutely understand what we want. They absolutely appreciate the communication. And one of them said that she believed we did an outstanding job in communication with them during this session. So I will put that on the manager's accolades list. And you know, I think that it's getting to be that time of year. I'm not sure exactly why this is going on, but you know, we did a great job, and I want to thank staff and the manager for what they've done on this. So Hazen will have more for that, on that, during his report. So with that, I'll turn to the attorney.
And no report, Mayor.
No report. Mr. Manager?
All right, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I do have two things. So can we pull up the Streamside subdivision? I thought somebody had a downloaded version of that. Did I? Okay. So we're gonna use a visual. Do you know, Lori? Oh. Okay. All right, so you know what, can we go back to that map was on last meeting. So I'll explain, you can just pull it up from the last meeting. So the issue became, traditionally, we've never done anything about this because these basically been cul-de-sacs. You know, one street in, one street out, one way in, one way out. It helps the residents. It really doesn't impact us. This is unusual, or the first time situation where there is a part of the road, like Wood and Cochran, are through streets, and they bring you out to the light there at Phillips Road and 51. A lot of people use it because it's easier to turn left if everybody can visualize. So it gets a significant amount of traffic. So in staff's opinion, it's in the town's interest and financial interest to participate in this program. And so what we're showing is, drum roll, drum roll, drum roll.
It's on there somewhere.
All right. So here's
Binoculars.
right? And if you guys can see the blue, right, the blue is the road that goes through. And so what we're suggesting is, on a square yardage standpoint, that the town would contribute that much, which represents 29%. So we're building or putting in making those improvements to make that street up to our standards. And then the neighborhood, which would include all the lots, not just the ones that are not on this blue line, that 71% would be shared with the 16 lots, okay? And I think CJ mentioned this to Mr. Bass. CJ, who's well, anyways, one of the fellows that's been a proponent of this, and we said, well, we don't want to say anything until we talk to the board, because ideally, if there was consensus on the board, then we say, okay, here's where the board's comfortable with, you guys need to go back and prepare the petition. So, did I go too fast? Was I?
29%.
Yeah.
Yes.
At the last meeting, it was in my brain that we should just participate in a third of it, roughly 33%. Because I think the bond was 38,000, and if you subtracted it, it practically worked out to a third of the cost anyway.
It's a great point. I don't know what kind of precedent this sets, right? And I guess the board's not tied to precedent. These are all legislative decisions. But, it's always nice to have precedent to me when you're making decisions. And to me, what's more important is instead of the third, which is logical, is what portion is part of that through street. So that's where we came with the 29%. And so if this ever happens again, which we certainly hope it won't, then there'll be some kind of rational nexus instead of kind of a third sounds good. So that's why we recommend the 29 and 71.
Yeah, I think, can we get this into some type of a procedure so that we can address this appropriately in the future if it's needed? But the other thing I do have a concern about, I want to make sure we're not providing an incentive to developers not to finish their work. And so we got to be careful with that as well. But I feel like this is the right thing to do.
Let me just say, our intern Tom, he's back there. The General Assembly has made changes in 2015 to roll back our ability to put in performance bonds, and they just did another roll, what I call a rollback in 2019. Tom is analyzing that, he's going to get with Lisa, but we are working. I would say the General Assembly is working against us in our efforts, and then we have this inflationary environment, and and the General Assembly has a feeling that the county, who worked hard at keeping those bonds, is just trying to rip off the developer. Reality is the county is being safe and conservative financially and holding that money to make sure, taxpayers, the towns, the county, nobody has to pay for that out of the fund. So, okay. So there's the yellow line. So the town would pay for this. The neighborhood pays for everything in orange, but it's going to be divided amongst the 16 lots. We're not going to say lot 7, you don't have to pay because you're within the blue area. They're all part of the unit. So they would share with the 71% would be shared with the 16 lots.
Mr. Melton.
Hazen, do we still get to hit, or do we get to hit the developer's bond to recoup our costs?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be used specifically on our portion?
No, I don't think so.
No, that just goes into the project budget.
The
We're talking about a percentage.
the concept was to take the entire cost of the project, apply the remaining development bond, and then we would pay for 21% of that
Well,
remaining
what it would be-
cost.
Yes, and their petition would be for a 71% participation. Petition, that 29, instead of 100% charged to the folks, they would be 71% to be divided by the 16 lots.
After the cost of the bond was applied.
Well, yeah, the bond, that reduces the cost. And you see, you get to vote ultimately on what the project cost is and set your assessment roll on that.
Will you bring back numbers to us at a?
So the next step will be, because the folks
New petition.
reduced their, or whatever, withdrew their petition, they have to prepare the petition. We do have budget, we do have solid numbers now, right? So they'll know what their costs are.
As of this week, so tell them to hurry.
Well,
For the most part, there are some things that may change, the
Yeah.
cost of cement, the cost of asphalt, if we
Soft
had
costs.
administrative costs
yeah.
added to it.
It's only when you adopt the assessment roll, when the project is completed, that you have actual costs to be able to assess.
But it's going to be much closer, that.
Oh, yeah, much closer, much closer.
Okay.
Good job.
I don't know who gets the credit. Becky had the idea, there was a team, it was a team effort.
Team effort.
Team effort.
Good idea. Team gets credit.
Team gets credit. Team Matthews.
Mr. Urban?
We talked about this last meeting. I'd still like to see a joint letter. We need to send this unintended consequence to Raleigh, and it needs to have each member of that residence sign on there as well, because they're taxpayers, and we're being stripped of our rights to sit there and say, you know, you're in bed with Rebec and all these other folks. We're having to put out money, which is taxpayer dollars, and these taxpayers are having to put out money. Here's an FYI, and it'd be nice to CC our other communities as well to let them know that we took this approach.
Yep.
Because that's not right. I think, you know, this whole issue of bonding is done for a particular purpose. Yes, Mecklenburg County sometimes gets heavy-handed, but there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. And, you know, we're going to continue to get screwed out of dollars and cents if we're not careful.
And I think the manager's going to bring that up in the next segment of his report.
Just a quick question for Charlie. How are we limited in, are we able to put on our website that this developer did us wrong? Is that, or we get, is that?
He didn't do us wrong, he did the development wrong.
Well, and if we're paying for 29% of us, he did us wrong as well.
Well, that's a legislative decision, that's not him doing anything to you.
He followed the letter.
I know, but you cannot pick on someone like that. That's not our business to point fingers at someone like that.
I'm offended.
Well, you may be, but you cannot put on the website that he got down and dirty.
Okay, Mr. Manager?
Okay, so one of the things, so we worked pretty hard to I guess we got challenged on our legislative efforts, and so we put it all together, a background kind of prior to 2019, then what we've done this session, and when you put it all together, because a lot of us went to Raleigh, and, you know, a lot of folks contributed. So I think the challenge was talked about resolution. I guess philosophically, you know, what's the saying? You dance with who brung you, and burning bridges doesn't do you any good. And so I think the philosophy of the board is try to work with, you know, you're not going to get everything you want, and blah, blah, blah. And so I think we have done that. One of the things we have not done is we have not taken position by resolution, and we could do that. And so if you, Lori, if you'll just scroll down to the last, there you go, keep going. Okay, so here's some things, if you guys want to, you guys could adopt this by resolution. One of it is to encourage the General Assembly to come to some kind of resolution on the budget. The budget does have some things that are good for towns in it, that I allude to it in that memo. So you could say, ask our delegation to please approve the budget. Not, you know, if it's Medicare that's stalling it, well, we're not into that. We're just saying there's things that are good for the town or all the towns. So the second one is the firefighter separation allowance.
Well, let's talk about the budget. Now, that was vetoed. It's gone back to the House again. So I think, as Dana mentioned earlier, there's some things getting sliced and diced on that. So we'll need to go back and really understand what the status of that is at this point. Because I think the first thought was to do a resolution to encourage the budget to, knowing it was going to get vetoed, to override that veto. And I don't know, that's where the bad stuff happens. Deals start getting made, and you end up with things in the budget that aren't appropriate in order to eliminate other things. And so we need to go back. We probably need to talk to Bo Mills about where we are on this thing at this point.
Okay. So the second thing there is the firefighter separation allowance. We've already gone on record against that. If you guys want to do a resolution opposing the bill, you know, we could put together a resolution that would include that. Senate Bill 355. This thing's kind of a bear. It's 130 pages long. There's some portions that aren't going into effect for 18 months. School of Government's going to do some training. I think, Charlie, you mentioned, hopefully at the Municipal Attorneys Summer Conference, you guys will hear a little bit about this.
We'll have some
I don't, you know, maybe it's on the agenda. You know, it's not a good bill for towns. The bad news is it was approved with significant bipartisan support. I mean, big significant, like 4 people voted against it in the House or something like that. Senator Bishop was a primary sponsor.
And it was the same in the Senate too, wasn't it?
Yeah, both
Yeah,
houses,
both
a whole bunch
houses.
of big passage. The governor approved it, signed off on it. I do wonder, kind of halfway out loud, is should sometime, after this thing we sort it all out, because the way we do a business, zoning-wise, is very important to our community, to the board and our community, and we feel like we get a good product. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't try to do some kind of special legislation to see if we can, kind of, whatever, get in there and protect our interests. But we could do a resolution about that. Okay, so the next one is outdoor advertising signs. That thing has not come out. That's a bad bill. That's a lobbying group that's trying to loosen our ability to regulate this. We could do a resolution on that. Vacation rental changes. This is not necessarily a big issue for us, but for some parts of the state, it's a huge issue, and people are trying to preempt local authority by just having one blanket bill, and that one size fits all rarely works for probably most anything. It's probably bad legislation. The protest petition, as I recall, the board has gone on record opposing. The board supported residents' ability to file a protest petition. We could reiterate that with some kind of resolution. And then the tree bill, everybody, one of the worst bills ever, right? And luckily, through not just our efforts, but a lot of people's efforts, that got withdrawn. So the bottom line for me is, if the board would like, we're more than happy to prepare a resolution for the August 5th meeting with some of these things that you guys can pass a resolution. I know the person that complained felt like a resolution was very important. It's what's the will of the board. That's the bottom line.
Let me address the Senate Bill 355. I think there's a broader issue that's occurred overall in the state over a number of years, and that's removal of authority from the municipalities. And I think that we are a member of the Metro Mayors Coalition. It includes many of the large cities, and we would be in a better position, I think, if we could have that group get behind a resolution that looks back at the trend of authority being taken away from the municipalities, and then that organization put together the resolution. And we could vote as a board to say, yes, we support that, and then move forward from the Metro Mayors Coalition to send that to Raleigh. I think that would be an approach that would give us more clout, having multiple cities on board.
That's a good idea.
Mr. Melton.
During the last board session of this board, members, and I can't remember if we all signed it or asked Mayor Taylor to sign it, we resolved that we were against any legislation that restricts control or takes control away from the local government. Government closest to the people governs best has always been our unwritten motto. Can we, and I'll ask members of this board now, would you consider reaffirming or putting your signatures on that just to bring it up to date, to go to our delegation in Raleigh now, and to reaffirm that, once again, continuity of philosophy for this Board of Commissioners? We just want to refresh and remind you of our statement about taking local control without being specific. Take the language in that resolution that we resolved, just reaffirm it or readopt it with current signatures and send it off to them while we're doing all the other. Would anybody be open to doing that?
I would. Sure.
Can we start that first? Can we have it updated, and even if Mayor Bailey signs it on behalf of this board, because I know there's going to be a significant amount of members absent in our August 5th, and I would like to have either a unanimous vote to adopt that resolution or have everybody's signature on it. I mean, I'd like to ask y'all to, let's get behind that as a group and reaffirm our position on that as a first item.
And in the meantime, we work with the Metro Mayor's group.
Right.
Yes.
In parallel.
I think that gets it started anyhow.
So I think that, you know, we have repeatedly put that resolution out there. It was time to perhaps take a different tact, which we worked very hard at ensuring that we had communication with our representatives. Until we figure out what went on with 355, I don't know if we'll know whether we were successful or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the important thing is it was, we knew what wasn't working, and to go back and do the same thing again, and that's the only thing you do, is just going to yield the same result. So at this particular point, I think there is some follow-up resolutions that would be appropriate for us to address. And I think we need to not specifically talk about Bill 355, but really talk about the broader sense of authority moving away from the municipalities. Mr. Higgins?
Yeah, I'd like to see this board periodically ask our representatives to come to us and meet us here. Maybe at least, I think once a year is not sufficient. And I would like to, I know they're in town frequently, so maybe it'd be great if we could get, you know, everybody at a 5:30 or something and just discuss issues as a group. I'd like to see us do that more regularly, so we're meeting, you know, at least twice a year and hopefully even maybe 3 or 4 times a year.
The town hall day just isn't effective.
No, there's too much going on.
Too many people,
It's a
yeah.
cattle call.
Yeah.
Well, but this year I did feel like we got a lot of, you know, I remember going into Senator Bishop, I don't know where we met, but it was relaxed. We spent a long time. I didn't feel like anybody was rushed or whatever legislative assistant was knocking on the door after 15 minutes. So it did feel like to me we got good quality time. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe we need to do
Well,
more.
I mean, I see Dan Bishop pretty regularly here, as well as Rachel Hunt. I mean, they're around. I mean, I see them at churches and things and shopping, so I mean, they're here, so we should try to arrange a meeting sometime.
I
Maybe a
think having them
delegation.
come to our meeting and so we've just got them contained would probably be worth as much to go ahead and have the town hall meeting, but then have a second meeting here.
Yeah, maybe at least a second meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turn a 5:30 into an hour and a half town hall format meeting in here.
Okay,
That's all I got.
all right. So we'll pursue those items and see where it goes. All right, anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor, all those opposed, motion carries unanimously.